All we are saying is please pay your tax. Here we go. All we are saying is please pay your tax. Pay your tax. Starbucks, 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 pay your tax. Starbucks,
Pay your tax to shut you down. If you don't pay your taxes, if you don't pay your taxes, if you don't pay your tax to shut you down.
Starbucks, pay your tax. Starbucks, pay your tax. Starbucks, pay your tax. Starbucks, pay your tax.
Or we will shut you down.
Pay your taxes, or we will shut you down. Pay your taxes, or we will shut you down. Pay your taxes, or we will shut you down. Welfare.
We say fight back. Fight back. Fight back. Fight back. Fight back. Fight back. Today,
45 Starbuckses!
45 Starbuckses
All over the UK!
all over the UK.
From Belfast!
From Belfast
To Cornwall!
to Cornwall
Are being transformed!
are being transformed
Into the services!
into the services
That we refuse to lose!
that we refuse to lose.
To women's services!
To women's services
That we cannot afford to lose!
that we cannot afford to lose.
Crashes!
Crashes,
Refuges!
refuges,
And homeless shelters!
and homeless shelters.
Starbucks!
Starbucks,
That £10 million
that's £10 million
PR stunt
PR stunt
didn't work!
didn't work.
Here we are!
Here we are.
We will not stop
We will not stop
until the government
until the government
does its damn job!
does its damn job.
It's not up to Starbucks
It's not up to Starbucks
to pick and choose
to pick and choose
when and where
when and where
they pay their tax.
they pay their tax.
Oi! George!
George,
Sort it out!
sort it out.
Who wants to hear from someone who's actually worked for a women's service? I just want to say it is really inspiring to see so many people here today making a stand against corporate tax dodging and the desecration of women's services by our government. I'm Isabel Young, I'm a former rape crisis helpline volunteer. I currently volunteer at the Women's Therapy Centre in Islington, and I'm a researcher looking at the effects of lag culture on women students in our increasingly privatised higher education system for the NUS. I'm not going to stand here and reiterate the statistics. We already know that women make up the majority of the public sector, that are the ones most reliant on public services, yet are the ones getting hit hardest by the cuts. What do we say to that? No! Unfortunately, this awareness of this reality doesn't seem to have done anything to assuage our government from continuing with the ineffective austerity measures and war against women. What I can tell you is that from volunteering in women's services amidst an atmosphere of uncertainty, organisations are having to compete for funding and can't guarantee the survival of their services for more than a few months at a time. I can't stress enough the importance of the women's services I've been lucky enough to be involved in. The values of empowerment, active listening, providing a safe space for non-judgment, for women to express their feelings around painful experiences of sexual violence, homelessness, domestic violence. It's really hard for me to convey just in this speech. Surprisingly, believing someone's story, understanding future and was saved by last-minute emergency council funding. But this was a lucky escape. Many non-profit organisations can't find the vital funds they need, and so begins closures, jumping through policy hoops and fighting against sister organisations rather than the government for the little resources on offer. So what do we say to that? No! It's easy to see organisations just as these faceless bodies who cost the taxpayer X amount each year, but it shouldn't even need saying that these are organisations made up of and used by actual people. If refuges have to close and helplines and drop-ins and advocacy services can no longer operate, then it's real women and real people who'll suffer. I've seen firsthand how crucial women's services are, and that's why I'm here today, making a stand against government cuts and tax offenders. So if tax dodgers like Starbucks are getting preferential treatment by our government and can get away without paying the millions of pounds of tax they owe that our economy desperately needs, then why on earth are organisations which provide services more useful than coffee and pastries being punished? Worse in times of economic hardship, not people's need for caffeine. So isn't it about time that the government redirected their damaging economic policies and stopped cutting vital public services like refuges and rape crisis centres and started filling the £32 billion tax gap? So I have a message for George Osborne and David Cameron. Get yourselves down to a refuge or speak to a survivor of domestic violence or sexual abuse and say to her face why you don't think the support services she relies on are worth funding. And while you're at it, you can tell her children while they'll be turned away from overstretched refuges and while they're going to have to stay in a violent household. If you really want, I can pass on a message to the young women, mothers and asylum seekers receiving therapy at the Women's Therapy Centre where I volunteer. I can tell them that despite the strength that they've shown in actively tackling life struggles by accessing our services, that you couldn't care less. The government, Starbucks and other tax dodgers don't want us to talk about rape, domestic violence and the threats to women's services over their weekend cups of coffee, but we will anyway. We're going to keep going until they stop cutting. So I'm going to end on a message of hope. We're going to keep speaking out. We're all going to start volunteering and we're going to keep supporting our local women's services. Because what we're doing today is only the start. Thank you.